What's going on, everybody? My name is Dominic, and today I'm going to be talking about my top 10 favorite horror movies of all time. If that sounds interesting, let's get right into the video. Hey guys, welcome back to my channel. My name is Dominic from Dominic Talks Movies, and I'm going to be talking, as I said, about my top 10 favorite horror movies of all time. Now, I used to be someone who really did not like horror movies whatsoever, but ever since I've started watching movies very enthusiastically and I've gotten really passionate about film, I figured that I would need to get into horror so I could expand my horizons, have a broader kind of love of film, because horror is one of those genres that has so much to offer, and now that I've really explored it to a pretty good extent, I think I'm somewhat qualified to talk about my favorite horror movies, at least as of right now. I've watched a decent amount, but definitely not as much as maybe I would like to. I'd like to check out more classic horror stuff and even some more modern stuff, but as it stands right now, I think I have a pretty solid top 10 horror films of all time that I really like, so I think quickly I'm going to rattle off a couple of honorable mentions that didn't quite make my list, but are still amazing horror films that I love. Those films would be The Lighthouse, Godzilla, the original from 1954, Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde from the 1930s, Peeping Tom, and Get Out. Those are all amazing horror films that I absolutely enjoy, but they didn't quite make my top 10 list. If those are any of your favorites, definitely keep in mind that I do love these films, but I still love 10 horror films just a little bit more. But with that being said, let's get right into my top 10. Coming in at my number 10 spot, I have Ridley Scott's Alien from 1979, I believe. This is a film that, I'm not going to lie, the first time I watched it, I was not very invested. I think actually, first time I ever watched the film, I stopped watching after like the first 15 minutes because the beginning of the film, no doubt, is pretty boring. It's really slow and quiet, but not necessarily in a good way. But that was honestly unfair of me to judge the film based on that, because the rest of the film is absolutely amazing. I think once you get past those first 20-ish minutes, I think this film gets really good really fast. You got some great characters, a great performance from Sigourney Weaver in the lead role. You got the xenomorph, which looks absolutely incredible in this, especially for the 70s. It was really good. It looked amazing. I loved the cinematography and the dark kind of creepy tone and atmosphere that this film created on the ship and even the planet where they first find the xenomorph. It was absolutely really dark and creepy, and I really loved the atmosphere of this film above everything else. It was honestly a really creepy movie as well, but I think like beyond anything else, I would say the atmosphere is really what got this film to be such an amazing movie, amazing horror film in general. It kind of reminded me a little bit of the classic Universal monster horror movies, because those were very heavily reliant on atmosphere because they didn't have the special effects and stuff that we have today, so they had to rely on atmosphere for the creeps and the scares, and this was definitely a film that was heavily atmospheric, and I love atmospheric horror movies, so this had to make the list. Coming in at number 9, I have The Silence of the Lambs from 1991. This very well may be the best horror film on this list in terms of technical aspects. I think there's one other, or maybe even two others, that would rival it, but this is absolutely incredible. It won Best Picture at the Oscars, which I honestly think it deserved. It is an incredible movie. I think the atmosphere and just the tone of this film is really dark and a little grimy and kind of disturbing. I love this is great on atmosphere, and it really makes you feel the film. This is a film that creeped me out more than it scared me, which isn't necessarily a bad thing, but there were parts that I was not a big fan of. I think Anthony Hopkins gives a phenomenal performance, and so does Jodie Foster, both in the two main roles. They both give incredible, in my opinion, Oscar-worthy performances. I think it established a compelling story right from the very beginning. It established all of the characters really, really well. It was phenomenally shot. I think the color palette really fit the dark tone of this film, and it was kind of like a gross, disturbing color palette as well. And I think overall this is a film that is absolutely spine-shivering, and it is super creepy with some amazing performances. And if you want to watch a horror film for purely just to watch a good movie that is a horror movie, this is definitely one that would be near the top of my recommendation list. Coming in at number 8, I have the original Halloween from the 1970s. Not exactly sure what exact year it's from, but it is a really, really good horror movie that is definitely a very influential film in terms of the slasher genre. Michael Myers is one of the most iconic movie villains of all time, let alone being a slasher villain. He might be the most famous of all time. It's just, he's an absolutely intimidating screen presence. This is honestly a film that really creeps me out, but as well as that, it is incredible in terms of just technical elements. It tells a really, really great story, and some of the characters are really, really compelling. I love Donald Pleasance as Dr. Loomis was really, really good. I loved his performance in this movie, and just his character was really, really cool. Then you got Jamie Lee Curtis, obviously, who gives a great performance, and she just absolutely kills it in this movie. It's absolutely creepy, really dark atmosphere and tone. It fits the film perfectly. The cinematography is amazing. The score fits the film perfectly as well. I'm pretty sure it was actually composed by John Carpenter himself, so he directed and composed the score for this movie, which is absolutely mind-blowing considering direction and score in this movie were quite honestly pretty brilliant. And it's honestly just a film that is a quintessential Halloween film, which sounds really cheesy because it's called Halloween, but to be honest, it really is, and it is a film that I try and watch every Halloween from now on. I've seen it for the past 2 or 3 years, and it's just one that I absolutely love and is pretty creepy, has some good kills, and it's just a great horror movie in general. I really cannot complain. Coming in at number 7 is The Killing of a Sacred Deer from Yorgos Lanthimos. If you want an absolutely chilling horror movie to watch that's not reliant on jump scares and purely based on atmosphere and characters and tension, this is the film I would recommend to you. This is possibly the most disturbed and freaked out I've ever been in a horror movie. The performances are absolutely phenomenal. The acting and style being kind of deadpan makes everything so much more creepy and unsettling. You got main role, we got Colin Firth, and then Nicole Kidman gave great performances. Also Barry Keoghan, I think is how you pronounce his name, also gives a phenomenal performance as the main antagonist of the film. And everything about this movie is beautifully shot, looks incredible, and is absolutely chilling to the bone. This movie freaked me out. The ending is mind-blowing. I highly recommend you go check this one out when you get the chance. Coming in at number 6, I have what in my opinion is the superior of the 2 John Carpenter horror films that I've seen, and that would be The Thing from 1982. I want to say straight off the bat, Kurt Russell is a brilliant main character in this. He gives a great performance, and the premise of this film is absolutely amazing. It is something that is super investing, tense, builds great tension, has some great scares, and the practical effects in this movie are absolutely stunning. They look so incredible for 1982. It's way ahead of its time. It looks super incredible. All of the performances around the board are honestly really great for the characters that they were playing. It looks phenomenal. The kind of setting of Antarctica works perfectly for this movie. It makes you feel alone, trapped, isolated, and that's exactly what the film was going for. The tone of the film is really dark and unsettling. It makes you feel like there's unrest among these guys now that you know what is going on. and it is a film that has a purposely ambiguous ending that still to this day keeps me thinking. I still don't fully know what I think about the ending of this film. That's not to say that I don't like the ending. The ending is absolutely incredible. I just can't make up my mind which theory I think fits better with the ending of the film. As I said, it is technically really well made. The score by Ennio Morricone is phenomenal in this movie. It works for the film perfectly, and I just think it is a really intense and amazing horror movie that you should check out. Coming in at my number 5 spot, I have quite possibly might be the scariest horror movie that I have ever seen. The Texas Chainsaw Massacre, the original from 1974, I believe. Leatherface is a crazy, intimidating, and really creepy villain alongside his entire family. They're all insanely creepy. The whole film has a kind of low budget feel to it and makes it feel like it's almost real, and that's what really sets this film apart, I think, is the really realistic feeling of the film when you're watching. When you're watching it, it feels like you're literally there and part of this little group of people that get stuck in this horrible situation. It's super creepy, really crazy. The kills are few and far between, but really effective. Once that first one happens, from then on out, you're just absolutely scarred. This movie is super scary, really freaky. There are some jump scares, there's some tension. It has all the perfect mixture of everything I want in a horror movie. It's just super creepy. I don't think it's necessarily phenomenally shot or anything, but as a horror film, it delivers the scares, it delivers the chills, and it delivers the unforgettable villain and I guess the family, the villains. And this is a movie that I won't be forgetting for a long time to come, and it is one that I honestly would love to rewatch sometime soon because I haven't seen it in a while, and it's just absolutely amazing. Coming in at my number 4 spot, I have Dario Argento's Suspiria. This is a film that I absolutely adored on first watch and kind of made its way down my lists over time. But now that I'm thinking about it again, I think it is going to start slowly climbing back up the list. This is an absolutely incredibly made horror movie. The production design and the sets are absolutely stunning. They look phenomenal. This is easily the best lighting and color I've seen used in a horror film ever. It really helps build the atmosphere and the vibe of this film. It's absolutely creepy and sinister. You got a great lead performance, and lead character is Susie Banyan. She's really, really great, and she fits the kind of innocent yet intelligent girl that really is a perfect character for this story. It's something really, as I said, it's very creepy. There's a little twist near the end that's really mind-blowing, and you honestly don't really see coming. It's just an incredible horror movie that is super tense, looks absolutely beautiful, and definitely one of my favorites of all time at number 4. Coming in at number 3, I have the film that probably scared me the most alongside the Texas Chainsaw Massacre is Black Christmas. This is probably the most recent film I've seen on this list, and it is way up there. This is an incredible horror movie. The vibe and atmosphere is absolutely creepy and dark, and it kind of started the trope of phone horror, if you will, that later got influenced movies like Scream, which also uses the phone horror trope. But I think this is the film, it did it first for sure, but I think it did it even better than Scream. This is an amazing movie. You got some great lead performances. The main antagonist is absolutely creepy. I love the experimental cinematography they use, especially the POV shots of the killer. It's absolutely amazing. You got some great technology there going on, some really intelligent camera work and editing that makes this film super fast paced, but also really creepy and slow at times where it needs to be slow and build up tension. And there's some really tense and creepy moments that I will not spoil because I think it's best going into this film as blind as possible, but this is one that really sent chills down my spine, really scared me, and it honestly left a mark on me for a few days after. So this is one that definitely is scarier than a lot of horror films I've seen, and definitely one that you should check out if you're an avid horror fan. Coming in at number 2, I have Stanley Kubrick's The Shining. This is one of the 3 films that I would say are almost tied in terms of the best made horror films on this list. One of the other ones including Silence of the Lambs, and the other one is the very next film at my number 1 spot. But Stanley Kubrick is an absolute master of filmmaking. He has tackled so many different genres and succeeded. Horror is just one of the few that he absolutely succeeded at. Jack Nicholson gives a phenomenal performance in the lead role. He even got a decent child performance. Shelley Duvall, as much as people clown her and make fun of her, I honestly thought she gave a really great performance, especially considering she essentially got tortured by Stanley Kubrick for this performance. But you know, I don't want to defend Kubrick for doing that, but he really brought out a great performance in her that worked for her character. It's super well written. It is beautifully shot. This is easily the best camera work in a horror movie that I've ever seen. Absolutely phenomenal. The set designs were beautiful. They worked perfectly. This is a film that doesn't have to rely on jump scares to scare you. It more is a slow burn, kind of tense filled psychological thriller that is still categorized as a horror movie, and it is easily one of my favorites of all time. It is a slow, patient, absolutely creepy and beautiful horror film, and that all together makes for one of my favorites of all time. You've probably seen The Shining and you probably think it's great just like me. But coming in at my number 1 spot, it has to be Alfred Hitchcock's Psycho. This is an absolute masterclass in filmmaking, has some of the best tension I've ever seen in a film. This has one of, if not my favorite performance of all time, Anthony Perkins as Norman Bates. He absolutely kills it. He's the perfect casting for this character, and he gives a perfect performance. Alfred Hitchcock obviously is a master of filmmaking, and this is no different. It builds tension like no other movie I've ever seen before. It's absolutely phenomenal. The camera work is great. The edit is great. The score from Bernard Herrmann is something I don't think a lot of people talk about, specifically with this movie, because there are so many phenomenal elements of the film that there are more things to talk about. But I think this score is really what sets the tone, the mood, and the atmosphere of this film that makes it such a hypnotizing and creepy film to watch. So I think the score is something really underrated in this movie, and definitely if you watch this film at some point, definitely be looking out for moments where the score really builds the atmosphere, because I think it is phenomenal and would not be the same movie without the score. But in every other aspect, it is an amazing movie, a masterpiece, dare I say, and definitely the best horror movie I've ever seen, and it is my favorite, coming in at number 1. And that is going to do it for my list of my top 10 favorite horror movies of all time. If you agree with any of my picks, definitely let me know down in the comment section. I'd love to hear your list of your top 10 horror movies. I'd love to keep exploring the horror genre. I feel like there's so much more for me to check out in terms of different styles and different eras of horror. So if you have any recommendations for me, definitely leave your lists below. I will make sure to check those movies out. But that is basically it for this video, guys. I have a ranking in the works right now. Definitely be on the lookout for that coming in the near future. But that is basically it for me, guys. I'm Dominic Talks Movies, and I'm out.